we hear that expression, you are what you eat. Well, this takes it to a whole new level. So if you want to be sleek and graceful and beautiful, you want to eat things like gazelle and antelope and things like that. If you want to be roly-poly, big belly, well, eat pigs, right? Get that big pork belly going. I love bacon. But that's what happens. You transform into what you're eating. But not just physically, also psychically. And this is part of, do you guys know what Hermetic cannibalism is? Okay. This is part of why they don't allow me to do communion at my church. Hermetic cannibalism is this idea of when you eat the dead, you bring them into yourself. This is part of where we get injunctions in the Bible as well, like Leviticus 19 about not tattooing into the flesh. But these weren't just tattoos like "Go Padres" or "Love You Loretta" on your throat or whatever. This is taking the ashes of the dead and tattooing them into your flesh, because that way you're carrying them with you. And in many tribal societies, when someone would die, they would consume the dead member of the tribe. Now, it wasn't for protein, it wasn't for nutrition, it was to keep them in the group. They didn't want them going off, becoming a part of some other group. So you would eat them. Often they would maybe burn them first and crush the bones into like a powder, and then they would drink collectively like a communion, a cannibalistic communion of the dead. But the idea was, when you eat the dead, you keep the spirit with you. And remember the sympathetic magic, like the juju, where you might want to wear a jaguar claw or owl talons. Well, what if you want wisdom or courage or honor? Well, you want to take the wisest, bravest, noblest warrior or chieftain, and if you can consume some of that person's flesh, the idea is you could take some of those qualities into yourself. And so we see this a lot in Mesoamerica, especially. And we're going to transition into polytheism in a couple minutes. But the idea there was, it was actually a great honor to be sacrificed to the gods. And if you know the story of the Aztec, their world was destroyed, I believe, 3 times by different floods. And Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, came upon the ancestors of the Aztecian people, and all they were was like bones. It reminds me of like the story of Ezekiel, the Valley of Dry Bones. And Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, had mercy on the Proto-Aztecians and gave his own blood so that the Aztecs could live. And so in thanksgiving and response for that, the Aztecs would offer human sacrifice to the god. And you know the steep pyramids, right, in Mesoamerica. Well, after that heart was cut out and sacrificed to the gods, the body would be like kicked down the steps, and then the people would collect the bodies and they'd take them home and eat them. And once again, it wasn't just protein or nutrition, it was trying to incorporate the virtues of those people into you. Yes?
I guess they depicted that exactly in Apocalypse.
Yes, they did a great job. I know a lot of people that have Mayan descent and things like that thought that was a poor representation, but I don't think so. I think, unfortunately, that was very much a part of it. But once again, you see how it ties into the worldview, this idea that death does not mean extinction, it simply means separation from the body. But that physical piece is going to go back to the earth or into another body, and then the spirit either goes back to God, or it could also go into another vehicle or another body. So you could have a transmigration of the soul, kind of like reincarnation, or you could have an incorporation back into the tribe, or it could go back to the Great Spirit altogether. So there's lots of different variations on that theme of what could happen. Now think about when the Catholic missionaries came to the Americas, and they began to teach the Aztecs about the mystery of the Mass. What is going on in Mass? What are Christians doing? I'm sorry, can't hear you. Yeah, what is it? eating the flesh and blood of the god, right? Think of what that would have meant to the Aztecs, who already were practicing Hermetic cannibalism, and they're like, wait a second, you're telling us we get to eat the flesh and blood of the god? Well, what does that do for you?
You take on the God's qualities.
Exactly. Isn't that what Christianity is all about? Or I'm misunderstanding? The difference, I would say, is we're not transforming the God into us. The God is transforming us into him, which is freaky. I mean, which is harder to believe, right? The Hermetic cannibalism of the Aztecs and Mayans, or the Christian idea that we're transmuting physical elements, and in doing so, it transmutes us into the divine, or into this partaker of the divine. And once again, I don't get to do communion at church, but I think this stuff is super, super interesting. And it helps you understand why different people in the world have different burial practices, right? Why not everyone thinks it's a great idea to burn the dead or bury the dead or these other things, because it's seen as a waste. They want to incorporate it. They want it to bring it back in.